She was the brilliant engineer, he the forgotten mechanic. When an impossible engine failed, a joke turned into destiny, and love ignited among the stars. The docking bay of Outpost Horizon smelled of coolant, ozone, and desperation. Ships came and went in ragged condition, most of them patched together with the barest scraps the frontier could provide. Horizon was the last stop before the outer, Veil, uncharted space where traders, explorers, and warlords tested their luck. It was here that Alara Valen, chief propulsion engineer of the research vessel Dauntless, paced in circles with a datapad clutched so tightly her knuckles whitened. She was 29, sharp-eyed, and known for solving equations faster than most computers. But right now, her reputation was fraying at the edges. The Dauntless had suffered a catastrophic failure mid-jump. Its experimental quantum helix drive, a marvel of physics that folded spacetime itself, had locked into stasis. Power readings flatlined, fuel conduits froze, and the engine became little more than a glowing statue. Without it, the ship was dead weight. Without repair, their mission was doomed. Crew members whispered that the ship might never fly again. Alara, however, would not accept defeat. She crouched under the exposed conduits, datapad flickering with failed diagnostic after failed diagnostic. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered. "The containment field is intact, the alignment rods are stable, but the harmonics, ma'am." A voice cut through the din. She looked up, annoyed. A man in grease-stained coveralls leaned against the bulkhead, watching her with curious patience. His hair was dark and unkempt, his hands calloused, his boots worn to the sole. A mechanic, one of the station's ground crew. "Yes?" "What?" Alara snapped. She didn't have time for interruptions. "You're trying to restart a helix drive by forcing the sequence from the outside," he said calmly. "That'll never work. You're treating it like a broken circuit board instead of, well, what it actually is." Alara bristled. "And you think you know what it actually is?" The man shrugged. "I've never touched a helix drive, but I've fixed plasma cores, fusion stacks, even a half-dead AI governor once. Machines may look complicated, but they talk to you, if you listen. Right now that thing is screaming and you're ignoring it." Alara blinked, then laughed bitterly. "Oh, that's rich. A station wrench jockey thinks he can do better than the chief propulsion engineer of the Dauntless? Do you even know who I am?" "Nope." He wiped his hands on a rag. "And I don't really care. The question is, do you want help or not?" For a moment, silence stretched between them. Alara almost dismissed him outright. Almost. But there was something unsettling in his confidence. Not arrogance, but the quiet surety of someone who had wrestled with stubborn machinery his entire life and learned its language better than people's. She rolled her eyes, more at herself than him. "Fine. Fix it then. If you can bring this engine back online." She chuckled, the words escaping before she thought them through. "I'll marry you." The mechanic raised an eyebrow. "That a promise?" "It's a joke," Alara said, exasperated. "Because it's impossible." He smiled faintly. "We'll see." His name was Jace Rowan, though Alara didn't bother asking until much later. He slid into the crawl space beneath the drive, moving with the ease of someone who didn't need schematics to understand machinery. While Alara fed him the system's technical readouts, he poked and prodded in places most engineers wouldn't dare touch without a manual. "You see," Jace murmured, tightening a relay coupler, "your diagnostics are too clean. That's the problem. The computer thinks everything is perfect, so it won't allow a restart. But no machine is perfect. If the system lies to itself, it gets stuck in a loop." Alara frowned. "That's impossible. I ran integrity checks. The sensors report what the system tells them to report," Jace interrupted. "But sensors get lazy, they learn your expectations. Sometimes you gotta trick them into telling the truth." He pulled a small tool from his belt, one Alara had never seen before. It was crude. 2 old calibration nodes soldered to a power cell. Jace clipped it across a conduit, and suddenly the engine hummed faintly. A ripple of light shivered across the drive housing. Alara's eyes widened. "How did you—" "Feedback loop," Jace explained. Gave it a reason to think it was out of alignment. Now it'll try to fix itself instead of sitting there smug. The engine stirred. Not fully awake, but twitching, like a comatose patient flexing fingers. Ilara's datapad filled with frantic alerts, but underneath the chaos, she saw something new, potential. Her heart raced. For weeks she had been hammering equations against a locked door. This man had nudged it and the door cracked open. Don't get too excited, Jace warned, crawling out from under the conduit. She's not fixed yet. This thing's temperamental, like a horse that doesn't like the rider. Ilara couldn't help a small laugh. You're comparing the most advanced propulsion system in human history to a horse? Sure, Jace said. Doesn't matter how fancy your saddle is. If the beasts don't trust you, you ain't going anywhere. By the end of that first night, they hadn't restarted the Helix drive, but they had done something no one else had managed. They made it respond. Ilara leaned against the bulkhead, exhausted. Grease streaked across her cheeks. Jace sat cross-legged, on the floor, sipping stale coffee from a dented thermos. For the first time, she allowed herself to really look at him. Not just a mechanic, not just a distraction, but someone who saw machines and maybe the universe in a way she never had. You're reckless, she said finally. Better than giving up, he replied. Ilara smirked, tired but grudgingly impressed. Don't think this makes us partners. You got lucky, that's all. Maybe. Jace tipped his thermos toward her. But I'm not leaving until this thing flies again, so you're stuck with me. She groaned, half amused, half exasperated. You're insufferable. Most people say that, Jace said lightly. Then, after a pause, so about that marriage proposal. Ilara rolled her eyes so hard it almost hurt. Fix the engine, Jace, then we'll talk. That night, in the quiet hum of the dead engine bay, a wager had been set. A joke, maybe. A challenge, certainly. But beneath it all, a spark had ignited, one that neither of them yet understood. And somewhere deep within the Helix drive, as though responding to their strange alliance, the dormant machine pulsed once more. The next morning, the Dauntless's crew filed into the engine bay, expecting to see their chief engineer buried in diagnostics again. Instead, they found Ilara, and Jace already knee-deep in the guts of the Helix drive, tools scattered, conduits exposed, and a faint vibration in the deck plates that hadn't been there for weeks. Is it alive? One technician whispered, staring at the faint pulse of light flowing through the drive's core. Not yet, Ilara replied sharply, straightening from the console. It's responding to stimulus, nothing more. She tried to sound clinical, but her heart betrayed her, pounding in her chest with every flicker of light from the machine. For the first time since the breakdown, the Helix drive wasn't inert. It was restless, hungry. Jace was on his back beneath the containment cradle, grease smudged across his jaw. She's waking up, he muttered, like a beast stretching, after a long nap. But she won't get up unless we coax her. The crew exchanged uncertain looks. Ilara ignored them. She hated how much sense his metaphors made. She hated even more that she needed him. All right, she said briskly, forcing her tone back into authority. We proceed in controlled stages. No improvisation, no theatrics. If this drive destabilizes, the entire ship will go up in an implosion. Cascade. Jace slid out from under the housing, wiping his hands. His eyes gleamed with amusement. Relax, Chief, I like living. I'll behave. Ilara scowled. You'll follow my lead, understood? Yes, ma'am. His grin was infuriating. For the next 2 days, they worked side by side. Ilara charted data flows, recalibrated sensor arrays, and wrestled with equations on her datapad. Jace prowled the engine room like it was a stable full of temperamental animals, tightening a valve here, tapping a relay there, listening to the machine as if it whispered secrets only to him. At first, Ilara dismissed his habits as superstition, but then came the moment when the coolant regulators started to overheat. The alarms blared. Her models showed catastrophic failure and she was seconds from shutting everything down. When Jace reached out and smacked the conduit with a wrench. The alarms stopped. Temperatures normalized. Ilara gaped at him. What did you just do? Loose sensor coupler. Jace said nonchalantly. It was lying to you. That's, she sputtered. That's not possible. My calibrations were precise. Machines don't care about your precision, they care about reality. He leaned against the bulkhead, smirking. You ever ride a horse? I grew up in the orbital colonies. We didn't have horses, she shot back. Figures. Jace shrugged. Sometimes you can't solve a problem by pulling tighter on the reins. You gotta let the animal show you what it wants. To her horror, Ilara realized her pulse quickened at his words. Not out of anger, but out of a reluctant thrill. He wasn't supposed to make sense, and he certainly wasn't supposed to be charming. That night, long after the rest of the crew had retired, Ilara stayed behind to review her notes. She found Jace still in the bay, sitting cross-legged on the deck staring at the slow pulse of light in the drive's housing. You don't sleep, do you? She asked dryly. Machines don't sleep. Why should I? He replied, not looking away from the glow. Besides, she's close. I can feel it. Ilara hesitated. Then, against her better judgment, she sat beside him. For a moment, they said nothing, watching the engine's faint shimmer. You ever think about why you do this? Jace asked quietly. Do what? Chase stars? Build things that want to tear themselves apart. Risk your life on engines no one's ever tamed. Ilara exhaled, staring at the machine. Because it's who I am. My parents were miners. I watched them scrape a living out of rocks while ships sailed past them into the unknown. I swore I'd never be stuck on the ground, never be powerless. Engines are freedom. Jace finally looked at her, his gaze steady, almost too steady. Freedom, huh? For me, it's simpler. I fix things because broken things deserve another chance. People, too. Something in his tone unsettled her. She looked away quickly, hiding the strange tightness in her chest. The next morning brought chaos. A priority transmission arrived from Horizon's command. Pirates had raided 2 nearby convoys, and the Dauntless was the only ship capable of intercepting them, if its engine worked. Captain Wren stormed into the bay, his voice cutting through the noise. Phelan, we need that drive functional in 48 hours, no excuses. Ilara stiffened. Sir, the system is unstable. Rushing it could destroy. No choice. The colonies are depending on us. 48 hours. He left without waiting for protest. Ilara clenched her fists. The weight of impossible expectation pressed down on her chest. She turned to Jace, ready to snap at him, to vent her fury. But he only met her gaze calmly. Guess we don't have time to argue anymore, he said softly. Something inside her cracked. Instead of anger, she felt the strange comfort of knowing someone else carried the burden with her. Against all logic, she trusted him. For the next 2 days, they became a blur of motion. Sparks flew as they ripped out faulty circuits. Sweat dripped as they rewired conduits. Jace's hands moved with raw instinct. Ilara's with precision honed by years of training. And somewhere between the chaos, the banter, and the long silences filled only by the hum of tools, they began to fall into rhythm, like 2 halves of a whole machine. At one point, while tightening a stubborn joint, Jace leaned too close and their foreheads nearly touched. Ilara froze, breath caught before snapping back and muttering something about personal space. Jace only grinned. Finally, on the second night, they stood before the Helix drive, bruised, filthy, exhausted beyond words. But the machine pulsed, with a steady rhythm now, no longer chaotic. She's ready, Jace whispered. Ilara swallowed hard, staring at the glowing core. This was it. Everything came down to this. She reached for the console, hands trembling. Initiating ignition sequence. The hum grew louder. Lights rippled across the engine housing. For a heartbeat, Ilara thought it would fail again. But then the Dauntless shuddered, the deck plates vibrating as power surged through the ship. For the first time in weeks, the Helix drive roared to life. Cheers erupted from the crew. Ilara laughed, an unrestrained, joyous sound she hadn't made in years. She turned to Jace, breathless. You did it, she whispered. He shook his head. No, we did it. For a long moment their eyes locked and the rest of the world fell away. And then Jace, ever infuriating, said with a crooked smile, "So about that marriage proposal?" Ilara groaned, but the warmth in her chest betrayed her. "Don't push. Your luck, mechanic." But her smile lingered long after she walked away. The stars stretched into ribbons as the Dauntless leapt into Helix space, its engine howling like a beast finally released from its cage. The crew clung to their stations, half in awe, half in fear, as the ship rode the impossible currents of folded spacetime. On the bridge, Captain Rin gripped the railing. "I never thought I'd see this ship move again. Vaylon, your team outdid themselves." Ilara, standing at the engineering station, tried to keep her composure. Sweat still dampened her collar, and her pulse hadn't slowed since the ignition. "It wasn't just me, sir." Rin followed her glance toward the auxiliary console where Jace stood out of place among the polished uniforms. Grease still streaked across his jaw. The captain's expression flickered. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. The ship burst back into real space on the edge of a convoy route. Wreckage floated like grave markers, twisted hulls glinting in the cold light. "Pirates were here," the helmsman muttered. Sensors lit up red. 3 ships decloaked ahead, sleek, predatory craft bristling with weapons. Their leader's voice crackled over comms, smug and cruel. "Abandon your vessel, Dauntless. The drive you carry is worth more than your lives." Ilara's stomach sank. The Helix drive was a secret. If pirates knew, someone had leaked. But there was no time to unravel betrayal. "Battle stations," Captain Rin barked. The Dauntless was powerful, but it had been a research vessel before a warship. Its weapons were limited, its shields untested. Worse, the Helix drive was still fragile, barely stable after their frantic repairs. A wrong maneuver could tear it apart. Ilara's console lit with warnings. She felt the hum of the engine deep, in her bones thrumming with nervous energy as if aware of the coming fight. "Chief," Jay said quietly beside her. "She's not ready for combat jumps." "I know." Her throat was dry. "But if we don't fight, we're dead anyway." The pirates opened fire. The Dauntless lurched under the first volley, shields flaring, consoles sparked. Ilara's hands flew over controls, rerouting power, whispering, half prayers to the machine she barely trusted. Jace braced against the console, steady as stone. "Easy, girl," he murmured, not to Ilara but to the engine. "Hold together." "Stop talking to it like it's alive," she snapped. He shot her a sidelong grin, even as alarms screamed. "Then stop acting like it isn't." The captain shouted for evasive maneuvers. The helmsman pulled the ship into a hard roll, engines straining. The pirates pursued like wolves, driving the Dauntless toward a debris field. Ilara's mind raced. The Helix drive could leap them out, but the instability meant they might rip apart mid-jump. "Options, Vaylon," the captain demanded. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She didn't have options. She had equations, probabilities, risks too high to speak aloud. Jace leaned close, voice low but firm. "Trust her. She wants to run." Ilara's chest tightened. Every instinct screamed that relying on instinct was madness. But she remembered the night Jace smacked the coolant conduit and silenced alarms she swore were right. She remembered the way the drive had stirred under his touch. Her hand hovered over the ignition. "If this fails, then we die anyway," Jace said simply. "At least this way we try." She met his eyes, searching for doubt, finding only steady conviction. Her breath caught. Then with a shudder, she keyed the drive. The Helix roared, stars twisted, space folded, and the Dauntless leapt. Alarms blared as the engine bucked like a furious beast, but it held. Barely. Ilara gripped the console until her nails dug into her palms. They re-emerged behind the pirate ships, startling them with impossible precision. "Fire," Rin bellowed. The Dauntless's cannons spat fury, tearing into an enemy frigate's flank. The pirate vessel spiraled out, hull erupting in fire. The bridge erupted in cheers, but Ilara barely heard. She was staring at the engine readouts, critical, unstable on the edge of collapse. "Again," Jace urged, his voice hoarse. One more jump. She can do it. No, she can't, Alara whispered. Another leap could destroy her. She's stronger than you think, Jace said. Stronger than you, stronger than me. You just have to believe it. Alara's hands trembled. Logic screamed no. Her heart, damn it, her heart screamed yes. She slammed the ignition. The Dauntless flickered through folded space once more, dancing between realities. This time, Alara felt it, like the engine wasn't fighting her but flowing with her, like a partner in a dangerous dance. She gasped, exhilarated. They reappeared above the last pirate ship, cannons primed. One devastating volley later, silence filled the void. The pirates were gone. When the cheers subsided, the captain's voice carried through the bridge. Helm, set course for horizon. Engineering, keep that drive alive long enough to get us home. Yes, sir, Alara managed, her voice shaking with relief. The crew dispersed, leaving her slumped against the console, every muscle trembling. Jace crouched beside her, his expression unreadable. You listened, he said softly. I was reckless, she muttered. Maybe. His lips curved faintly. Or maybe you trusted her, and me. Alara looked at him, really looked. And for the first time didn't see a nuisance in grease-stained coveralls. She saw the man who had dragged her back from the edge of failure, the man who believed in machines the way others believed in gods. I still don't know how you do it, she admitted. Jace shrugged. I don't fix machines. I remind them why they were built. Engines want to move, guns want to fire, people want to live. You just have to let them. She shook her head, torn between awe and exasperation. You're impossible. And yet here we are. His grin softened. So, about that marriage proposal. Don't. She raised a finger, trying not to laugh despite herself. Don't push me right now. But as she turned away, a traitorous smile curved her lips. Later, alone in her quarters, Alara stared at her reflection in the mirror. Grease smudges, tired eyes, a woman who had staked her life on instinct over reason, and survived. She thought of Jace's words, broken things deserve another chance. She wondered if maybe that applied to her too. The hum of the Helix drive echoed faintly through the hull, steady and alive, like a heartbeat. For the first time, Alara didn't hear a machine. She heard a promise, and she wondered against all logic if she was starting to fall in love with the man who had made her believe in it. The Dauntless limped back into Horizon Outpost on the edge of triumph and collapse. The Helix drive was still functional, but its readings screamed instability. Panels flickered, conduits rattled, and every crew member knew they had barely made it home. Crowds gathered on the docking ring as the scarred vessel descended. News of the pirate skirmish had already spread, and whispers rippled through the station. A research ship half dead only days ago had somehow sprung back to life and crushed a fleet of raiders. Alara should have felt proud. Instead, as she stepped down the ramp, she felt like every eye was a weight on her shoulders. Admirals, investors, and reporters were waiting. The Helix drive was no longer just a machine. It was a symbol, and symbols attracted both power and danger. Jace walked beside her, oblivious to the stares. His coveralls were still stained, his hair a mess, his grin maddeningly casual. Smile, Chief, he murmured. You just saved a convoy and proved the galaxy's deadliest pirates aren't invincible. I also risked tearing this ship apart mid-jump, she hissed. Details. He winked. Before she could retort, Admiral Kessan, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, eyes sharp as knives, strode forward. Chief Velan, extraordinary work. You've done the Republic an invaluable service. Alara inclined her head stiffly. Thank you, Admiral. And you are? Kessan's gaze flicked to Jace. Mechanic, Jace said simply, extending a grease-streaked hand. The Admiral did not take it. Instead, his lips curved into a thin smile. Unorthodox help, I assume. Alara bristled, heat rising to her cheeks. Without him, the engine would still be dead. Kessan's gaze lingered on Jace a moment longer, cold and assessing, before turning back to Alara. We'll debrief tomorrow. Rest, Chief. The Republic has plans for you and your engine. The implication was clear. Your engine belongs to us now. That night, Horizon's officers threw a celebration. Music echoed through the station halls, drinks flowed freely, and crew members of the Dauntless were toasted as heroes. Ilara, however, lingered at the edge of the crowd, uncomfortable in the sudden spotlight. She sipped her drink mechanically, eyes drifting to the viewport where the scarred hull of her ship gleamed under station lights. You hate this, don't you? She turned. Jace had found her, holding a mug of something strong and unidentifiable. He looked at the crowd, not her. They're celebrating survival, she said. They're celebrating ownership, Jace corrected. They see the Helix, drive as a prize, a weapon, not whatever it's meant to be. Ilara frowned. You think I don't know that? I think you do. And it's eating at you. For once, she didn't argue. She just stared into her glass. The weight of truth, pressing heavy. After a moment, Jace tilted his head. You know, you don't have to carry this alone. Her laugh was humorless. And who else is going to carry it? The Republic? They'll gut the drive, turn it into a weapon, and hand it to people who don't understand it. The only reason it even works is because you and I... She stopped, realizing too late what she had admitted. Jace's smile was softer this time, almost gentle. Because you and I... Ilara's cheeks burned. She quickly looked away. Later, when the celebration dwindled, Ilara returned to the Dauntless. The engine bay was quiet, the Helix drive glowing faintly like a slumbering giant. She approached it, laying a hand on the railing. They'll take you apart, she whispered. Dissect you, strip you of mystery. You were never meant for that. Talking to her again? She startled, spinning. Jace leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with that infuriating calm. Don't sneak up on me. You're louder than you think. He walked closer, gazing up at the drive. She doesn't want to be caged, same as people. Ilara exhaled. You make it sound alive. Maybe it is, Jace said. Not like us, but alive in its own way. You can't cage life and expect it to thrive. Their eyes met in the dim glow of the engine. For a long moment, silence stretched, thick, electric. Then Jace chuckled softly. Careful, Chief. Keep looking at me like that, and I'll start thinking you meant what you said about marriage. Ilara groaned, turning away, but her lips curved despite herself. You're impossible. And yet here I am. The next morning, the debrief was a battlefield of words. Admirals and counselors crowded a chamber demanding schematics, production timetables, and control. Ilara stood at the center, spine rigid, jaw clenched. The Helix drive is unstable. It cannot be mass-produced safely. If you try, you'll kill crews before you save them. Unacceptable, one counselor snapped. The Republic cannot allow such a strategic asset to remain singular. She's right, Jace's voice cut through the room. All heads turned. Ilara's stomach plummeted. He wasn't supposed to be there. But Jace walked forward, unapologetic, meeting the glares of men and women who held the fate of colonies in their hands. You don't understand this engine, he said simply. You think it's just metal and math. It isn't. Push it too hard, force it to be what it's not, and it'll tear itself and you apart. The only reason it flies is because she listens, because she respects it. He nodded toward Ilara. And maybe because it respects her back. The chamber buzzed with murmurs. Some scoffed, some listened. Ilara felt her pulse race. No one had ever defended her like that. Not with conviction, not without agenda. The admirals conferred in low voices. Finally, Kessin spoke. Very well. The Dauntless remains under your command for now, but the Republic will be watching closely. Back in the quiet of the engine bay, Ilara paced furiously. Do you have any idea what you just did? You don't barge into a military council and tell the truth? Jace interrupted. She glared. You embarrassed me. You jeopardized everything. No, he said, stepping closer. I kept them from chaining you. From chaining her. He nodded at the engine. They'll still try, but now they know you're the only one who can make it sing. That buys us time. Ilara opened her mouth, ready to argue, but the words caught, because he was right. And that terrified her. She turned away, pressing a hand to her forehead. You drive me insane. Jace's voice softened. You drive yourself insane. I just stand here and watch. Her laugh was shaky, breaking through her frustration. Slowly, she lowered her hand, facing him again. You're not just a mechanic, she admitted. He tilted his head, smile crooked. You're not just an engineer. The silence between them felt like gravity. Heavy. Inevitable. For the first time, Ilara didn't fight it. That night, alone in her quarters, she found herself replaying every glance, every word, every maddening grin. Against all logic, she wanted to see him again. Not for the engine, not for survival. For him. But she also knew the Republic would not rest. They would push harder, demand more, and eventually, they would cross a line. The Helix drive had become more than a machine. It was a choice. Freedom or chains. And she had a feeling that choice would test not just her loyalty to the Republic, but her loyalty to the man who had made her believe in the impossible. The days after the Council's decision were uneasy. The Dauntless remained docked, but the ship no longer felt like home. Inspectors prowled its corridors, logging every spark, every hum, every shift of the Helix drive. Engineers in crisp uniforms whispered about optimization and reproduction models. To Ilara, it felt less like oversight and more like vultures circling. She spent long hours in the engine bay, sitting on the grated deck, staring at the faint glow of the Helix. She remembered the first time she'd seen it pulse again, the fragile moment between despair and hope. It had been alive then. Now, under watchful eyes, it seemed quieter, dimmer, as though suffocating under scrutiny. Jace found her there one evening, as he always did. You're brooding, he said, dropping onto the floor beside her. I'm thinking, she corrected. Same thing, just less honest. Ilara shot him a glare but couldn't hold it. Instead, she sighed. They're going to take her. You know that, right? They'll cut her open piece by piece until nothing is left. She won't survive it. Jace leaned, back, arms behind his head, gaze fixed on the drive. Then don't let them, she scoffed. And what do you suggest? We steal her? Run off into the void like fugitives? Why not? Ilara blinked, stunned by the casual certainty in his tone. You can't be serious. Dead serious. You said it yourself, engines are freedom. This one more than any other, and freedom doesn't come from permission, it comes from choosing. Her chest tightened. That's madness. They'd hunt us. The Republic doesn't forgive theft of military assets. And what's the alternative? Stand by while they turn her into a weapon? Watch her die on a dissecting table? Watch them use her to chain people instead of setting them free? Ilara wanted to argue. Wanted to call him reckless, arrogant, naive. But when she looked at the Helix drive, faint and fading, she knew he was right. And when she looked at Jace, steady and unflinching, she knew she couldn't do it alone. The decision came faster than she expected. 2 nights later, she caught wind of the Council's final order. The Helix drive was to be removed from the Dauntless and transported to a secure facility. The procedure was scheduled for dawn. That gave them only hours. Ilara stormed into Jace's quarters, her pulse racing. They're moving her tomorrow. He sat up instantly, no questions, no hesitation. Then tonight's the night. Within minutes they had a plan. Crude, desperate, and likely suicidal. But it was all they had. The engine bay was empty when they slipped inside under cover of curfew. Security patrols prowled the outer decks, but the inspectors had retired for the night. Ilara's hands shook as she keyed in override codes, bypassing locks she herself had installed. Once we ignite, every alarm in the station will go off. Good, Jace said, rolling up his sleeves. That means we'll be hard to ignore. Together they worked in frantic silence. Jace tore away limiters, while Alara recalibrated the ignition for a blind jump. The helix pulsed brighter under their touch, as though sensing the urgency, as though eager to flee. When at last the drive thrummed with readiness, Alara hesitated, her hand hovering over the console. "If we do this," she whispered, "there's no going back. We'll be criminals. Traitors." Jace stepped close, so close she could feel the warmth of him despite the cold metal air. "If we don't, we'll be cowards." Her breath caught. Slowly, she nodded. "Then let's fly." The ignition roared. Lights flared across the engine bay. The Dauntless shuddered, system screaming to life. Alarms blared across Horizon Outpost, sirens howling. Security rushed through the halls, but too late. The helix drive had already awakened. Alara and Jace raced to the bridge, where startled crew members scrambled from their bunks. "What's happening?" the helmsman shouted. "We're leaving," Alara barked, sliding into the engineering station. "Strap in or get out." Captain Rin appeared in the doorway, furious. "Vaylon, what the hell do you think you're—" "Saving her," she snapped. Before he could respond, the ship leapt. Horizon Outpost vanished in a blur of warped starlight. The Dauntless plunged into the helix stream, power surging like fire in its veins, but it was not a clean jump. The drive was straining, overloaded by the rushed calibration. The ship groaned, bulkheads rattling. "Alara!" Jace shouted over the roar. "She's fighting it!" "I know!" Her fingers flew across the console, sweat streaming down her face. "We need to stabilize her. She's burning herself out." Jace slammed his hands against the housing as if willing the machine to hear him. "Easy, girl. Don't tear yourself. Apart now, you're not running alone, we're with you." The vibrations eased just enough. Ilara's breath hitched. It wasn't possible, and yet... She listened. She whispered. Together they coaxed the drive into harmony, balancing instinct and calculation, intuition and precision. Slowly, impossibly, the turbulence settled. The Dauntless surged forward, steady, alive, free. When the jump ended, they were far beyond mapped space. Stars glittered in unfamiliar constellations, a silent ocean untouched by Republic hands. Alara collapsed into her chair, laughing breathlessly, tears stinging her eyes. "We did it. By the stars, we actually did it." Jace leaned against the console, equally exhausted but grinning like a fool. "Told you she wanted to run." Alara turned to him, heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with adrenaline. "You're insane." "Probably." His grin softened. "But so are you." Silence stretched, thick with everything unspoken, and then, without warning, Alara closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was fierce, desperate, the release of weeks of tension and terror. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Jace's eyes danced with mischief. "So," he murmured, "about that marriage proposal." Alara laughed, shaky, but real. "You fix an impossible engine. You save my ship. You make me defy the Republic itself, and you're still going to hold me to a joke?" "Not a joke," he said. "A promise." Her chest tightened, but this time not from fear. She met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "Then maybe I should stop running from it." Jace's grin widened. That sounded like a yes. Alara rolled her eyes, but kissed him again anyway. Outside, the helix drive pulsed brighter than ever, its rhythm steady and sure. Not a weapon, not a prize, but a heartbeat, alive, free, and carrying two souls who had chosen each other and the stars. For the first time, Alara felt the truth in Jace's words. Broken things deserved another chance. And so did she.